Good Thursday afternoon, everybody. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandajis here with your Atlantic Tropical Update, and today we're talking about a brand new named storm, and that is Sam. 18th named storm of the season. Today is September 23rd, 2021. We're getting awfully close to clearing out the list. We've got 3 names to go, Sam being the most recent addition. And if you're saying to yourself, 18's a lot, yeah, it is, but compared to last year, which is the most active season on record, we were already in the Greek alphabet by this point, with subtropical storm Alpha had already formed a couple days before today. Here's a look at the basin overall. We've just got one name system. Peter and Rose, Odette, all were short-lived systems. We do have 3 other waves out there, though, that do have a possibility of developing, especially this one in the North Atlantic, 60% chance over the next 5 days of developing. But Sam is really going to be the one that pulls most attention here over the next several days, 10 to 14 days, actually, because it's a slow mover, and it's forecast to become the 4th major hurricane of the 2021 season. So here's how it looks on satellite imagery. This is infrared, and overall it's not a large system. Also doesn't look all that impressive just yet, but it's in a conducive environment. We've got relatively low wind shear, not much dry air in place, and very, very warm sea surface temperatures. And what you're looking at here is the infrared, so this tells us the temperatures of the cloud tops. And the colder the cloud tops, the stronger the convection associated with the system. And when you're starting to see shades of black and red and even some white showing up there, those are extremely cold cloud tops. So the more you see those brighter colors, or the darker colors really, the stronger the storm is getting, and we'll likely see that increase in coverage over the coming days. Looks a little bit more impressive here on visible satellite, though. It certainly has that structure, that look of a tropical storm, but I want to draw your attention to what happened here over the last few days in terms of the visible satellite imagery. This is really interesting. Look at this rope of clouds, this convection kind of tethering the system to the African continent. And what this looks to be is the boundary between some Saharan air, some Saharan dust to the north, and much more humid air to the south. So this, in fact, is a boundary, but it just looks like a tether kind of holding on to Sam as it moves off towards the west at a rather quick pace right now at 16 miles per hour. So here is the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. The first one put out on the system, well, it was a tropical depression, so there was a cone out on it, but the first track as a named storm. And notice it gets up to a major hurricane that's Category 3 or greater by the time we get towards early Sunday morning now. It's in fact a little bit sooner in time. Or actually, it looks like Sunday night into Monday morning, we're up to 120 mile per hour winds, and it peaks at 125 by Tuesday morning. Notice it doesn't really cover all that much ground in 5 days. That's the extent of the cone of uncertainty, getting wider the farther we go out in time. But there's the Northern Leeward Islands, the U.S. British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. This is going to be a close call. What are the models seeing this doing? Well, each line you see here is a different computer model. And in the bunch is the GFS ensemble, and that's the GFS model run several different times. There's 30 different members, and we tweak it slightly at initialization to see if there's a different outcome. Pretty large spread this far out, expected, especially with a slow-moving storm and steering patterns that are still going to have to fall into place. But here's the cone overlaid on top, and notice the majority of these models now are lying in that southern half of that cone of uncertainty, and they've been adjusting farther and farther south with each run as this storm continues to be a slow mover and slowly to kind of get its act together, not becoming a major hurricane until we get towards early next week, later part of the weekend. So GFS and European models here pretty much on top of one another to start things off. Then there starts to be some disparities as we go a little farther out in time. GFS shows a stronger system a little bit quicker, and it strengthens it continuously as it moves off towards the west. European eventually gets on board, but does have it moving a little bit quicker and a little bit farther to the west. And as we get out to Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, European shows a major hurricane very close to Barbuda here in the northern portions of the Leeward Islands. There's the U.S. British Virgin Islands. There's Puerto Rico. GFS, larger, very strong storm, just a little bit slightly farther to the east of that center there where the European has it. And then by Thursday, we've got a major hurricane here, probably 100 miles north of Puerto Rico in the U.S. British Virgin Islands. So very, very close call here. Now, what can change is where the setup comes for a weakness in the ridge. What's driving this storm westwards is a big high, an Azores high, that's expanding as it pushes off to the west. and where a weakness does develop, which the models are hinting at as it's just to the north of the Leeward Islands to pull it northwards, all going to be dependent on the timing, how quickly the storm's moving, and the overall setup. If the storm's a little bit slower than forecast, it may miss that window to travel northwards and stay safely out to sea. So it's really going to come down to timing as we play things out in the evolution of the storm going forward. It's got plenty of warm waters to work with here. Sea surface temperatures well into the 80s. A lot of that warmer water, especially the farther west you go, is extending down to a greater depth. The ocean heat content is much higher. So with a slow-moving storm like this, especially when it's over a major hurricane status, it's over higher ocean heat content, meaning the upwelling going on in the ocean, the mixing up of the cooler waters, won't be a factor in weakening the system as it moves into a major hurricane just to the west or to the east, northeast of the Leeward Islands there. So that's a little bit concerning. So final thoughts here. The slow movement of Sam will likely cause fluctuations in the storm evolution and the trajectory. Like I mentioned, it may miss that window to move north in that weakness in the ridge. We'll see how that lines up. A weakness in the ridging as Sam nears the Leeward Islands should, in theory, pull the storm northwards as it's able to sense that steering aloft and it gets picked up and moved northwards. Missing the time window for that turn north could pose significant threats to the northern Leeward Islands and needs to be watched extremely closely. Not saying it's going to be an impactful event, but the possibility is there and we need to watch it closely. So until next time, David Paul will be up next later on this evening for an update on any changes. Until then, you can find me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.